So today we will be talking about foreign lobbying influence on U.S. involvement in foreign conflicts with a case study on Israeli lobbying and political funding. So what is foreign lobbying by definition according to the law? Foreign Agents Registration Act of 1938 defines that for us. It was enacted on June 8th of 1938, and its purpose historically was to combat Nazi propaganda and covert influence inside the United States. Congress feared foreign governments were secretly influencing U.S. public opinion, so they passed a transparency law requiring registration and disclosure. What does FARA say? So FARA doesn't ban foreign influence, it just regulates and requires transparency. So the definition according to FARA in this U.S. code is that a foreign principal is a foreign government, a foreign political party, a foreign person, a foreign corporation or organization. So an agent of a foreign principal is someone who acts at the order, request, direction, control of a foreign principal, and they specifically engage in political activities in the U.S., lobbying U.S. officials, public relations and propaganda work, fundraising or disbursement of money for a foreign principal, representing foreign interests before U.S. agencies or Congress. So, a comprehensive history of foreign lobbying in the United States. Jewish Agency for Palestine, otherwise now known as Jewish Agency for Israel, was founded in 1929 as the operative branch of the World Zionist Organization, which is a foreign principal. It's an organization that acts outside of the United States. And this was during the time where the British Empire, I believe they had the Palestinian Mandate. So it existed essentially to kind of call a cause to have a Jewish homeland in this Palestinian Mandate. So in the 1930s, between the 1930s and the 1940s, I believe it's specifically 1938, the Jewish Agency creates a U.S. information office, and their activities included public relations campaigns, media outreach, political lobbying efforts. In 1943, creation of American Zionist Emergency Council, otherwise known as AZEC. The Jewish Agency works with AZEC, the Jewish Agency works with American Zionist groups, meaning multiple American Zionist groups, to create AZEC to mobilize political support. AZEC ran one of the largest PR and political influence campaigns in the United States history at that time, which is 1943. According to my source, it was also announced that a larger number of communities had gone over the top this year than any previous year in the history of the USA. So, in 1948, officially, the Israeli state was declared. The Jewish Agency becomes part of that Israeli state. The Jewish Agency formally transfers most government functions to Israel, but continues as a national institution, right? Meaning they're acting like they're an American, kind of like an American institution. But in reality, they're an Israeli one, a foreign one. In 1952, Israel passes the Status Law, which recognizes the Jewish Agency as a partner of the State of Israel in immigration, settlement, and diaspora relations. We know what diaspora relations is, right? Like propaganda, keeping other people on the same page with interests. Now we're going to be talking about Israel's under-the-table lobbying and the evolution of AZEC to AIPAC, which is currently operating today. And I want to direct your attention to the fact that AZEC, right, AZEC, the American Zionist Emergency Council, was directly connected to the Jewish Agency for Palestine, which is obviously a foreign lobby, or a foreign power, a foreign principal, right, or foreign agent, whatever you want to call it, right? And they get all their funding and support, and everything is done by the Jewish Agency. So it's very important to consider this, because this is the real company name, like the real PAC name. It just evolved and changed names to AIPAC. It never really changed. So in 1949, the American Zionist Council was formed. AZEC is reorganized into AZC, American Zionist Council, an umbrella of 9 Zionist organizations. Funding still remains from the Jewish Agency as the primary source, a recognized foreign principal by definition of the FARA. So AZC begins large-scale U.S. public relations and political influence work. In 1951, right, Isaiah Kennan, he was working directly for the State of Israel as a minister and foreign affairs spokesman, as well as the Jewish Agency information director. right? So he moves to Washington to run public affairs and lobbying for AZC. So he's kind of leading the AZC. I want to take your attention to this letter by Nathan B. Lenvin, right? This is January 17, 1951. This guy, he's an attorney for the Department of Justice in the FARA division. Isaiah Elkanan, right? That's who we're talking about, the guy who is going to eventually run AZC, meets with Nathan to talk about kind of the nature of his work, right? So Isaiah tells Nathan that he wants to kind of discuss his possible obligations under the Foreign Agents Registration Act, right? In the event that he terminates his present activities and establishes his own public relations business, right? So Kennan is coming to Nathan and talking about, hey, I want to run this public relations business. I need to know my obligations, what needs to be done under FARA. So Mr. Kennan stated that his first client would probably be the government of Israel. And consequently, I told him that he should file a new registration statement on Form FA1, Foreign Agent 1. I explained Mr. Kennan the restrictive application of the Exhibit A, which he had filed to the registration statement of the Israeli Office of Information, and the necessity for filing a new statement. So he said he would file a new statement as soon as he commences his activities on behalf of Israel, right? So obviously we can see that this guy, Isaiah Kennan, he's here to act on behalf of a foreign government, and this government is Israel, right? This is the foreign power that Kennan wants to establish a public relations business or public relations PAC. So in 1953 to 1954, the American Zionist Committee for Public Affairs is now formed. AZC creates a non-tax exempt lobbying arm to avoid legal issues, right? And they named it American Zionist Committee for Public Affairs. It kind of sounds more Americanized, and it's led by Isaiah Kennan, okay, who still has direct ties to Israeli state institutions. 1959 comes, the AZCPA renamed to AIPAC. So what is AIPAC? American Israel Public Affairs Committee. It sounds fully American and not foreign directed, right? And that's intentional. They kind of want to deceive the public about their perception, their intent, what they really are. So the AZC is gradually replaced by AIPAC as the main political arm acting in America, in Washington, right? And they kind of did this to seem like they're not a foreign lobby. They did this intentionally, and they did some legal loopholes around it, the FARA. So in 1959, AIPAC is formally established. AZCPA rebrands as AIPAC. It's led by Isaiah Kennan, the former foreign agent. AIPAC becomes the main public lobbying power promoting support for Israel. In the 1960s, right, to 1963, Kennedy and his administration, they had a confrontation with this sort of lobbying that was going on. So JFK and RFK, they pushed to enforce FARA regulations on AZC. Though AIPAC was not formally targeted at the time, it was indirectly, since it was structurally part of the same network and shared personnel, funding channels, and purpose. So AIPAC escaped FARA enforcements at that time because of how it was legally structured. They utilized loopholes. They relabeled themselves to seem like they're an American interest group, but in reality they're an Israeli interest group. It had separated itself on paper from AZC right before the Department of Justice did their investigation. So the Department of Justice orders AZC to register under FARA, and they were very non-compliant. They were delaying it. So I have this letter I would like to reference to, which is on behalf of Congressman, what was his name? Donald Rumsfeld, right? And he sent this letter to Kennedy because at the time the Wall Street Journal was talking about what the country was going to do and label the American Zionist Council as an agent of the Israeli government, and it will depend upon the risk of offending Jewish opinion in the United States. So this is kind of like a paper evidence that at the time, right, Kennedy and his administration, they recognized that this kind of council, the American Zionist Council, was a foreign agent. It was a foreign agent, right? And they were kind of scared that this would, if they really went through with it and enforced FARA on this specific lobby or agent or this foreign principal, it would kind of be bad for PR. It would be bad. It would maybe some Jewish Zionists wouldn't be very fond of the United States government. So that risk was there, and I'm assuming it played a role. The United States government doesn't want to lose donors, doesn't want to lose intel, right? So what is the modern day impact of foreign lobbying, specifically with Israel? Why does this need to be solved? A foreign power is acting in our country using financial advantage to press their agenda. So when a big fish comes in, right, it's putting so much money into their agenda that other agendas that are more important to the United States populace kind of get suppressed. They get less attention, while their interests get more attention because of more money going to it. So this has effects in our taxpayer dollars, because what are the interests? A lot of the interests that AIPAC pushes for, especially in the modern day, is sending funding and weapons and arms support to Israel. And that's a foreign country. We're giving them grants. We're not expecting to be paid back. So this leaves our own country vulnerable as well, because we're doing so much. We're putting so much on the line for a foreign power and not really getting much back, right? Some may argue that Israel is very important in the region for the American interest, but that's not necessarily true. Not important enough to get $300 billion in grants, not loans, right? We don't do that with any country. Look at Saudi Arabia, look at the UAE. There's always trade going on. Like, when we give them stuff, they give us something in return, but we don't see the same with Israel necessarily. It's very unproportional. So throughout the years, right, since Israel has been founded and declared an official state, it's been funded over $300 billion in grants that were paid from our taxpayer dollars. Let's put that in perspective. I went out of my way and did some research to what $300 billion could have solved in the United States, right? It could have solved college, right? People lack education here. So we would have had tuition-free community college nationwide for 30 plus years with $300 billion. We could have ended chronic homelessness entirely, multiple times, right? $20 billion a year to effectively end chronic homelessness. We could have done it for 15 years. Fund national homelessness solutions. We could have done universal insulin coverage for all Americans for decades, right? Free childcare and preschool for millions. It only costs 30 to 40 billion a year, yet we've given 300 billion to a foreign power. Modernization of U.S. infrastructure, right? The American Society of Civil Engineers estimates approximately $260 billion is needed to repair the nation's school buildings alone. We could have repaired all school buildings, keep them nice and efficient for the future youth of this country, right? The future of this country is the youth. We could have solved the Flint water crisis 300 times. It would have only costed 500 to 700 million to solve that. We could have done it 300 times over. Right? We could have provided high-speed internet to every rural American with only $80 billion. So now we know what the issue is, right? We need to talk about the solutions to this issue. We need to know how to solve this. How can we turn this over and for the benefit of Americans, for the benefit of everyone, right? So now talking about possible solutions. I think that number one on top of the list for effective solution, it would be to kind of strengthen FARA. We need FARA enforcement and more of a modernization. This act wasn't updated since 1966, and many foreign PACs are actually using it for their advantage, not just Israel. And basically, we need to expand FARA to cover coordination and funding, not just direct control. We need public reports annually of what this PAC is doing, what this lobby is doing with their money, who they're funding, right? What else they're spending the money on. Are they spending it on maybe media coverage? Stuff like this. And we need to give the Department of Justice a dedicated FARA enforcement unit with real investigative power. We need to close the PAC and super PAC loopholes in foreign policy lobbying. There's a lot of loopholes that many PACs use to avoid being labeled as a foreign lobby, such as Israel's AIPAC, right? They do many different things. They label themselves to be perceived as an American interest group. In reality, they get their money through under the table, funnels through the Jewish agency, which is an Israeli power, or Israeli agent, an Israeli principal. So we need to require full donor transparency to PACs, involved in foreign policies, all foreign policies. So we need to also establish a Congressional Foreign Influence Review Committee. If a Congressional Foreign Influence Committee was there, and it was objective, they objectively looked at these PACs that are advocating for foreign influence, like foreign policies, or for foreign interests in the United States. We need the Congress to look over this, see who's in charge of this, really, right? To kind of review major foreign aid bills and assess lobbying pressure, hold public hearings on foreign influence campaigns. This would effectively represent the United States population in a better light, because I'm assuming most Americans don't want all their money going to Israel, right? Especially when we have so many financial issues on our own. Now, if we look here, we see Ted Cruz, a Republican senator, given $1.8 million from AIPAC. Donald Trump, the current United States president, from the Republican Party, given $230 million, nearly 230.5. Damn, that's a pretty big number. And Kamala Harris, a Democrat, the previous vice president, given nearly $10 million. So, sort of what this AIPAC is doing, what this foreign lobby is basically doing, it's effectively giving money to both parties to ensure a kind of a guarantee that all foreign aid bills get passed in Congress, and they're basically buying foreign aid for cheap. They're just influencing our politicians by money to ensure that they get their bills and interests passed through our Congress and our government. And this needs to change, because our representatives should be representing us. They should be trying to be better for us. They should serve the United States population. They shouldn't serve a foreign power. I find that quite ridiculous, and I believe a lot of people would find that ridiculous too if they saw the full image of everything. Anyways, I wish nothing but peace and love in the world. All hate is bad. I hope this isn't perceived as hatred towards Israel or the Israeli people. This is just a perspective on foreign lobbying policy within the United States. Thank you very much for watching. Goodbye.